Within the last week, we've gotten some of our first glimpses into what MLB The Show 25 may hold. First, San Diego Studios announced that Sets and Seasons will not be returning next year. While I personally believe that this approach had the potential to work in theory, it was really hard to implement with the randomness of player performance during the season. There have also been a few small hints, like 2 different MLB 25 logos that have been seen, and some details about varying modes seen here. Most notably, there are some pre-draft additions to Road to the Show, and some off-season additions to franchise. But maybe our biggest look at potential new features comes with a Diamond Dynasty survey that many players were sent over the last week. While these features may not all come next year or ever come to fruition, it's interesting to see what San Diego Studio is tossing around. First, there are a few survey questions about card cosmetics, which could be unlocking different variations, limited edition cards with signatures and relics, like Topps baseball cards, or the ability to showcase a stat tracker of your choice. Now, these features won't influence too much, maybe for some of the market with the limited cards due to scarcity, but this could be a fun challenge for most players that would be personalized. If you have a favorite player and want to do something cool just beyond getting them to Parallel 5, card cosmetics would be a cool addition. Next, we have some looks at some potential new card series suggestions, starting with the one-dimensional cards. This series would see players who specialize in one thing but have low scores for the rest of their tools. I could see this being good in the early stages of the game release, or maybe make for some fun events down the road, or maybe this could coincide with some captain cards if they return. Regardless, this is where speed or power cards would shine really bright. Next is the Retro Draft Card series, where players are featured during their first appearance in professional baseball. Player attributes would be based on their scouted potential at the time of the player being drafted. This could mean that players like Byron Buxton would have less power than his current card counterpart, or it could also mean that high draft picks like Jurickson Profar could be juiced. Another potential new series comes with rival cards, where players are highlighted with a rival team, and they would get a boost when you play against other users with players from that team. For example, you could have an Aaron Judge card that would get boosted if your opponent has a good amount of Red Sox cards. Duo cards are also mentioned in the survey, which we may have caught a small glimpse of this last year with the combined no-hitter Topps Now cards with the Cubs. Each of these cards had the same art, but the players involved had their own separate card that you could collect. These duo cards would have a boost for having each part of the duo placed in your lineup. Similar to the older Evolution cards from a few years ago, there's also a new idea for Rogue Series cards, which start low and work their way higher as you complete goals and missions with that player. It kind of sounds like the parallel system, but instead of accumulating any stats across the board, you may get rewarded for piling up stat totals similar to the player that you're using. For example, this could mean you have a Lawrence Butler card that are speed-related missions like hitting triples. So again, this Rogue series, it might be like the Evolution, it could be a beefier version of the parallel system. Remains to be seen if we'll ever see this one implemented. The last card series that the survey mentions is the College Card series, which specifically mentions a player like Paul Skeens getting a card for his time at LSU. College is something that I think has a strong chance of getting added this year, as we've already seen mention of new pre-draft activities in Road to the Show. Plus, we saw some advertising that MLB The Show had last year with a special web URL set behind some college baseball stadium backstops. We already have full minor league systems, and there's been a lot of draft or pipeline players, so college seems like the next logical step. Moving on to some other ideas, there are a few mentions of double XP and PXP tokens, which may be similar to what you might find in Call of Duty. I think this is a great idea where players could get rewarded for grinding whenever they see fit. We haven't really seen this in effect with the parallel system as of yet, so this might play into more missions for the card cosmetics that we touched on earlier. It could mean that you get a Parallel 5 sooner, or you can make some headlong progress into a program. Speaking of cosmetics, there are a few graphical additions that have some ideas behind them. The first is the home run belt, where players would wear a belt in the game after hitting a home run, similar to a WWE Championship belt. This would signal to your opponent to maybe pitch a bit more carefully the next time your player comes up to bat. Additionally, there's some gameplay unlockables mentioned, like golden cleats and themed baseballs. Personally, if people want to spend stubs on these, by all means, I just hope that you have the option to turn it off for other players' unlockable stuff. Purchasable perks similar to the ones in Showdown could also make their way to Diamond Dynasty games as power-ups of sorts. I think this one would be kind of cheesy in online head-to-head games, but personally might be pretty fun for offline grinds. You could get power boosts for playing the computer on Conquest, or maybe you could save these for offline games for extreme missions if those were to come back. There are also cosmetics for Team Affinity that could boost your team if you happen to have a stadium, jersey, or other equipment for that team, as well as mastery badges that could display progress on how many home runs you've hit, or icon challenges for getting some crazy stat totals. I think some of these would be pretty fun. You get to show off different features that other users might not have. And as we've seen with the captain cards, there are some people who are really crazy about only using their favorite team, so getting some extra boosts for that may be a different workaround for that. The last few survey questions pertain to other items that would be completely new to Diamond Dynasty. First is the Commissioner mode, which players can form a group and vote on different changes to their Diamond Dynasty games every so often. This could include the universal DH being moved back to pitcher at-bats, or you could do bans on certain types of players, maybe in a similar realm to League of Legends where you ban heroes. This may keep things fresh throughout the season and work in a similar vein to sets and seasons. Personally, I think this may work best as a separate mode. Still, if you could vote on having things like bunt cheesers or people with just high speed being gone from the game for a couple weeks, that might cause some people to come back and play the game. There's some new head-to-head options as well, such as clubs, where you can form a club with friends and get rewards for going up against other clubs. Or for fans of online franchise, there is an online mini-season mode that's mentioned. This could allow you to form a league similar to the online franchise mode. Lastly, there's a question in the survey about prop bets, where you could vote on real-life baseball happenings such as the home run derby and getting rewards for picking the winner. I could see there being a daily prop bet of the day, like whether Freddie Freeman gets a hit or something like that. In any case, I would see some caution being used on prop bets. We don't want the game to turn into too much of a gambling central. So those are all of the proposed game additions that were teased in this survey. Again, nothing is confirmed to be in the next release of MLB The Show, but I do have a pretty strong personal hunch on the college stuff. Do you have a favorite of any of these options, or a card series that you might think would be fun to use? Let us know in the comments section. Or if you happen to get the survey in your personal email address, be sure to fill it out and let the developers know yourself. We'll have more news on MLB The Show 25 as we continue on into the winter, so be sure to subscribe for all the latest happenings. Signing off for now, this is Kasabi from Showzone, and we'll see you next time.